What's going on, people? And today I wanted to talk about a topic that I see come up fairly frequently in my stream chat, as well as semi-frequently in the comment sections of my videos. So I figured I could, deliver my 2 cents on it, because I think I have a bit more of a nuanced perspective, and I've thought about it quite a bit. And that question, of course, is why do all these Roblox JoJo games suck so bad? Why is it that almost all of the time when these games come out, they're garbage and don't last any time whatsoever? And despite that, tons of people get ridiculously hyped up and they're all ready for it to come out, and then it does, and everyone's like, this is the best for like a week, and then it dies. So the question has to be asked, surely some of these should do well, and yet none of them do. So why? And I think I have a pretty decent answer as to why. So that's what the video's here for. I think the reality when it comes to these Roblox JoJo games is that the development of them is vastly dominated by a bunch of inexperienced minors. So if you're looking for the real answer as to why all these Roblox JoJo games suck, it's because they're being developed by people who barely know how to code and have no idea what they're doing in terms of game design. That's probably the simplest answer here, but I think it does go a little bit deeper than that. So if you were looking for a face value answer, the real one is very, very easy to come by. If somehow you've been asking yourself this question for a long time and you haven't come to that conclusion yet, well, there you go. Now you have. Now, as I said, I think it goes a little bit deeper than this. So I want to cover a few specific things while talking about why all of these games fail. And the first on the docket is that developers don't need to play their own games. This is one that I get the impression of a lot when I play almost all of these games, and it's usually some ridiculous requirement that it's clear nobody actually went and did themselves, or if they did, maybe one person did it ever, was like, that's good enough, and then just called it a day. I've called into question Roblox's Unbreakable in particular many times in this regard, and I've got it on good authority that, in fact, yes, they do not actually play their own things that they create, or at least not a sizable amount of the people over there do. And because of that, it starts to really make sense as to why some of the grinds are ridiculous. If you're just arbitrarily throwing numbers in and saying, that's good enough, and then not actually testing how long it really takes and how obnoxious it really is to play, then you sort of see the problem. This problem, of course, stems from the fact that these people don't really think that through and, well, they're inexperienced. But as I said, that's the root problem. The next reason to touch on is the massive lack of actual game in a lot of these games, which I think is a side effect of Roblox itself. Roblox itself, the platform, doesn't tend to lend itself to, well, real games. It lends itself to games like Blox Fruit, where you kill the same enemies for over 12 hours. It lends itself to games like Pet Simulator, where the game literally plays for you. Or it lends itself to games like ABD, where it's like a momentary distraction in your day, and then you forget about it, because there's just not very much game there at all. And unfortunately, because of this baseline precedent, we see the same thing time and time again, where people put out their games, but there isn't actually much of a game there at all. There's no depth. And without any depth, there's almost no reason to actually return, which is why these games become flavor of the week games rather than games that people actually want to go back and play again. It doesn't exactly sound like rocket science, and that's because, well, it isn't. But the reality of the day is, if the game only consists of logging in and getting a stand and then quitting, or logging in, getting a stand, and then grinding 100 hours and then quitting, then there's almost no reason to come back to play to begin with. If there's not some tangible thing that you want to unlock or some reason to continue and experiment with the things in the game, then you're not going to do it. And that's just what we see. Now, the other thing that I wanted to touch on is arguably the most important to me as a consumer, and it's something that I think people need to be a little bit more cognizant of as they play these kinds of games, and that's the microtransactions, which will segue us into another thing that I want to talk about in a second. Just like I said earlier, that the platform itself is sort of the catalyst in a way for the reason that a lot of these games don't have very much game to them, the same goes for the microtransactions. The reality of the day is these games need to make money in order for people to continue to want to develop them. There are some people who are working solely on these things as passion projects, but most people would like to make money, or at the very least, they need to make money in order to continue to pay the people who are also working on the game. We live in a world where making this kind of stuff as a charity worker, yeah, that doesn't really work out. The real issues arise from the fact that predatory microtransactions have become the standard on Roblox, and really in gaming as a whole. So when you combine the fact that most of the people developing these games are under the age of 18, and you consider the fact that they've grown up with these predatory microtransactions as if they're completely normal, then you can probably get the perspective on why a lot of the predatory microtransactions and RNG elements and just general bullshit in these games stems from less so a complete and total greed, and more so from a naive upbringing where you just don't really know any different. If the only way that you know how to monetize is to have ridiculous RNG and gambling, and that's the best system, then that's what you're gonna see. It's unfortunate, truly, but I mean, that's the world we live in. Now, the last thing that's important, and it stems from the microtransactions, and it's that there are really two types of people creating games on Roblox. And I think the distinction between these two types of people is really important, and you should always consider it when you're looking at games. The first type of person is definitely the majority, I would assume, and that's the passionate creative visionary. These are the kinds of people that have a lot of passion for their game. They've been playing other games in the genre for a long time, and they want to take a crack at it. They want to see if they can make their own game that they can have fun playing, and or their friends can have fun playing, and share that with other people. And hey, if they can make some money on the side, awesome, but really what it comes down to is they want to make a product that they're proud of. Now, this all sounds pretty good on paper, but what happens when that passion dies out? Well, I've got a great example for you. It starts with why. That's all I'm gonna tell you. But in all seriousness, passion cannot last forever, and eventually you're gonna burn out and get bored of what you're working on and wanna move on to something else. You know who doesn't get bored of what you're working on and wanna move on to something else? The people that are playing it, the fans. So then you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. You either continue developing it and continue making money and try to support those people, or you give up and quit, or you try to sell your thing off to somebody else or get other people to work on it so you don't have to. Either way, there isn't really a right answer here. But no matter what these people do, they'll never be as bad as the second person that we're here to talk about, and that's the child manipulating EA. I say child manipulating EA, but as far as I know, Electronic Arts has nothing to do with this. They just have such an awful representation that it's very easy to personify people as evil EA executives, and you immediately get the point of what I'm talking about. Said EA evil executives are the kinds of people that make games like B-Game or Blox Fruit or any of those ridiculously popular, insanely monetized front page games. They're the people that know the ins and outs of how to manipulate children into buying microtransactions and exploit whales to their highest degree. And if you've been paying attention to anything I've said throughout this entire video, you surely should have picked up the biggest issue here. And that's that there's almost no middle ground between these two types of people. So much so that it seems like overnight we can see someone go from passionate game developer to EA executive. It's baffling. But whether or not you believe some of these games are effectively made by soulless corporations, the point stands that when you get the two extremes of either completely incompetent new game developer that has no idea what they're doing, or EA executive who's trying to make as much money as possible for as little game as possible, yeah. You wanna know why Roblox JoJo games are so bad? There you go.